Welcome to the Real and Real Estate Podcast, your go-to show for real estate success. Whether you're an agent aiming to crush it or a buyer or seller wanting the inside scoop, we're here to deliver expert advice, insider tips, and the real talk you need. Each episode, we chat with top industry pros to give you the facts, strategies, and inspiration you need to thrive in this business. Let's dive in and make big moves together. Hi, welcome back to the Real in Real Estate, where we talk to the experts in real estate and get the facts. And today we have a very special guest. We have Carey Worrell with Simple Law Texas, and she's a real estate attorney. She does a few other things too, but we're going to talk about real estate today. So welcome, Carey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am very excited. This is a very wonderful topic. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself for a minute? Introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Carey. As you already said, I own the law firm Simple Law Texas. We do real estate, we do business, estate planning, and probate. Also, we do some immigration. I have been a lawyer for, oh my gosh, too long, like 22 years. Doesn't seem
Wow.
like that long, but that's how long it's been. And during that, I went to U of H for undergrad. I went to
Great.
Harvard Law School.
Wow.
And since then, I've done all kinds of fun things. I've worked for the federal courts, worked for a big law firm, worked for a small law firm, but now I own my own law firm. We have 5 attorneys and we love helping people. And as our name suggests, we try and make things easy and simple and not stressful.
Well, congratulations on opening your own firm, first of all. But yes, whenever it comes to law, I think everybody would like it to be made simple. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Yeah, a lot of lawyers overcomplicate it. They don't do us any favors. So
Yeah, it takes a
try
while
and
to
make it
read
easier.
some of the things they write, but
Yeah,
for me, for the common man, right?
exactly.
So anyway, real estate is what we want to talk about. As a realtor, we run into things like probate situations. We run into divorce situations. I mean, there's always something that we have a question about. So I guess the first thing I would like to talk about is probate. That seems to come up actually more often
Mhm.
than divorces, although I have been a court-appointed realtor for a couple of divorces, and that's a whole nother animal.
Oh
We
yeah,
can
I'm sure.
get to that later, but let's talk about probate because that's also very often confusing as to who
Mhm.
owns what and how can you help?
So there are a few ways I can help, but I think the best way for me to help realtors is to just give them a little bit of education on how probate works, why it's important, and how you can spot an issue for your client from the get-go. So at a listing presentation or really early on, as opposed to what happens a lot of times, and I'm sure this has happened to some of your listeners, they don't even find out there's a problem until the title company lets them know maybe a week before closing. And by that time, you already have a contract. People are waiting. People have maybe moved out of their house.
They've spent
And
money
it's
on inspections and appraisals and all that sort of
exactly.
thing.
And by then, it's really usually too late to fix it in time for that closing. But if realtors were, familiar with the process and why problems arise, they could probably catch those issues really early on to the point where you could go ahead, list the house, get with a probate attorney that's going to help you solve this problem in a time frame that lines up with the natural progression of a real estate contract. So really just getting a little bit of education out there for realtors on why these problems come up, how to identify them, what are the questions that can be asked at a listing presentation, those types of things. And I know there's a lot of people out there, corporate sponsors and things like that, that sponsor classes for realtors in this area. I know I provide a lot of them, but lots of resources online too, just to get a basic education on how it works and what questions to ask.
Okay, yes, I actually know a realtor now that's working with some people, and it's a very complicated situation where the mom died, the daughter's supposed to own the
Mhm.
house, but the ex-husband is still on the title. I mean, it's a real mess, and you
Yeah,
can't assume that anything is done. It's got to be in writing,
right.
correct?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you've got to get all that documentation. So yes, getting you involved right away and knowing what to ask
Yeah,
is amazing because you can't always just go on, well, it's my house. Maybe it
right.
is, maybe it isn't.
Exactly. And a lot of times clients, potential clients for the realtor are not trying to deceive their
No.
agent. They just really don't understand because they think, oh, well, I owned this house with my husband and it's a community property state and he passed away. So now it's mine. Nothing needs to be done. They really do
Not
think that, but
necessarily. Yeah.
unfortunately, that's not usually true. And so getting those questions out there at the beginning to at least say, hey, let me connect you with the probate attorney and they can tell you if you really need to do something, but I see some issues here. And that also really establishes credibility for real estate agents when they're trying to convince somebody to list their house with them. um, to be able to ask those questions really shows superior knowledge of areas other than just real estate.
Yes.
And even if it turns out there's not a probate problem, you've shown that potential client, oh, this person really knows what they're doing just by virtue of having asked these questions.
Oh, absolutely. And I am a big proponent of education. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast to get information out there to realtors and to the public. So if
Yeah,
someone that's not a realtor that's listening to this podcast, then they are also getting the information. They
absolutely.
might be in that situation. Do they need letters of heirship? What do they need?
Right. And yeah, and I mean what they need will depend on their situation. But I think the questions, and I mean, I could talk about this for a really long time, but just to the questions that homeowners should be asking themselves and real estate agents should be asking their clients are things like, how did you come to own this home? Did you buy it? Did you inherit it? Is it your mom's home and she passed away? Has it been in your family for generations? And the answers to those questions will be the things that you say, okay, there may be an issue here. And if it turns out somebody in the chain of title has passed away, then what you really need to know is, did this person have a will? Has this will been probated? Does this will need to be probated? And those are all questions that a probate attorney can answer pretty easily if they're, an expert in the field. But some people just don't even know to ask the question.
Right. And is it true that, well, you said perhaps it needs to be probated. I was under the impression they all need to be probated, the wills. Is that not necessarily true?
It's not necessarily true. It's going to depend on a couple of things. First, it's going to depend on what types of assets did this person have. Obviously, we're talking about real estate, so we're assuming they have real estate, but not everybody does. And if you don't have real estate, you may not need to probate a will because there may be beneficiary designations on accounts, or maybe there's just no assets in the estate or something like that. For people that do have real estate, even in some instances, you might not need to probate the will. If somebody had a transfer on death deed on file, you wouldn't need to probate the will for real estate. But also, if somebody's will says the exact same thing as what would happen if they did not have a will, you can sometimes get by on a real estate transaction without probating the will.
I do know the title company is going to need any documentation you have on that, though.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Title company is always going to want to see it.
Thank you for mentioning a transfer on death. Can you just give it? A lot of people don't know about this. Could you give us a brief explanation of that and who it would benefit?
Yeah, so a transfer on death deed is a super simple way to pass ownership of your property to your heirs or your beneficiaries or whoever you want to own that property after you pass away. And really, all it is a document that you sign while you're alive that basically says, I own this house at 123 Main Street. You do need the legal description. When I pass away, I would like it to go to this person. If this person has already passed away, then I would like it to go to this person. You sign that, you file it in the real property records in the county where the property is located. And it almost serves as like a beneficiary designation for real estate. So people are used to that, like on a retirement plan or a 401k or something.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing. And no probate is necessary. That will trump a will. And it just automatically goes to the next owner after the previous owner dies. You just have to file something called an affidavit of death in the real property records, and that's enough. And it's very easy. And again, for homeowners, every homeowner should have one of these, or property owner. It doesn't have to just be a home. It can be any real estate. It's very inexpensive to do. It is super easy. And also, this is another thing that real estate agents can be telling their clients about, even their buyer clients. Hey, look, you just bought this house. I would really recommend that you get a transfer on death deed so that it's taken care of if you were ever to pass away. It's really easy to do. It's kind of one of those like no-brainer type of things. The benefit really outweighs the cost.
I know it sounds wonderful, and a lot of people don't know about it. So thank you for explaining.
Yeah,
That's something I probably should consider on my home for my
absolutely.
children. Make
Yeah,
things easy for them as much as possible.
it's very easy. It's very easy.
Yeah. Well, let's talk for a moment about divorces because those come up a lot when you're selling real estate. Whether you're the court-appointed attorney or you're just the attorney advocating for either or both sides to sell the home. There's a lot involved in that, though, as well.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, the number of scenarios that could arise in divorce is probably infinite. But I think the main things that people should be looking out for are, you know, was this a home that was purchased while someone was married and they are no longer married? If you're a real estate agent, you need to know that because that's going to affect how the contract needs to be written. Um, is this a home that is part of a divorce settlement already? Has somebody finalized their divorce and that divorce decree says what should happen with this house or how the proceeds should be split? And even on the home buying side, you have, a lot of times couples separate well before their divorce is finalized. And one of
Right.
those people might want to buy a house before the divorce is finalized. And it's really important for buyers and agents to understand that even if you're in the process of a divorce, you're still married until that divorce is finalized, even if you've been separated for maybe years. And that needs to be taken into account when you're closing it because I've definitely had some clients, they've been separated, they have their own money, they can qualify without their spouse that they're about to divorce, they buy a house, and then when they go to sell that house, the title company says, well, you were married when you bought this house and your spouse, now your ex-spouse, needs to sign off on this. And people are extremely surprised by that. But there is some documentation that you can put in place at the front end that would prevent you from having to do that in the future, but it is an issue.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that because I was always under the impression you should not buy anything until the divorce is final. But my lights just went out, but
Oh,
that's
great.
okay.
Uh-oh.
You can still see me.
Oh, yeah.
But there is documentation, something you could do that I guess has the other person relinquish all rights to it while you purchase your home.
Exactly. I mean, it ideally, yes, you would wait until after a divorce is finalized. That's always going to make it easier. But sometimes that's honestly just not possible. People need a
Right.
place to live. And if they've moved out of the home that they lived in before, then, what are they going to do? But yeah, you can basically get your spouse to sign off on something. And you can also put language in your divorce decree when it is finalized that will show that this is the home only of this spouse. It's their separate property and no, input from the previous spouse is necessary when
Right.
they go to sell it.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, good. That's good to know that that's an option.
Yeah,
Well, what are
absolutely.
some other major things you see regarding real estate and law?
Oh
What do you
gosh.
deal with?
There's an endless amount. I mean, I would say definitely probate and divorce are
The top two.
the top two. But we also have, your common neighbor disputes, HOA disputes, things like that. We try and help people resolve those without having to litigate them. It's never suing your neighbor is not something you ever
Never a
want to
good thing.
do. But also something we see a lot is, people wanting to sell or buy land that is not, in a platted subdivision. So land out, in the country or something that's
Right.
acreage or that is, not in a traditional subdivision. A lot of times that requires additional legal work in terms of figuring out what exactly you're buying, figuring out what exactly somebody owns so that we know if they even can sell it. So that's a lot of the work we do is just helping people in real estate transactions that are a little bit outside of the ordinary.
Right. And I have heard of instances where you'll get to closing and realize they have the wrong legal description. You're actually about to buy something you didn't want.
Oh, and I've had a few where people did buy something that they didn't
Oh
want. I
no.
mean, and a lot of times this happens with family members where you have one family member buying it from another family member. And a lot of times they think, oh, well, we don't need a title company. I know they own it. Should always get title insurance, no matter what you think is the case, because what sometimes happens is, aunt owns lot 1 and 2, the nephew wants to buy lot 2, they accidentally put the legal description for lot 1 in the deed,
Right.
and now it's backwards of what they
Yeah.
thought. And that's fine if that's noticed while the aunt is still alive, but if something that, file it in the real property records, go on about your business. Everybody thinks it's this certain way.
Right.
They act as though it is. It's not a problem. Aunt passes away. Nephew now wants to sell the property. He goes through title company. Title comes like, you don't actually own this. And it's now a little bit harder to undo because the aunt or whoever it is, I just made that up, but who sold it to you is no longer there. Now you have to
Right.
get a lot of other people to sign off on it. And they may not actually have the knowledge of what happened in that transaction. It can be a little complicated to fix.
This is another situation similar, I guess. It actually is in another state, but we'll pretend like it's here in Texas. I have a client that the parents died. There's like 4 or 5 children, siblings, and they're trying to sell the property. Of course, people are not agreeing. And
Yeah.
so it's sitting and sitting and sitting. There's really no way around that, is there? I mean, they're just stuck until they can get everybody on the same page. Is that correct?
There is in Texas a mechanism for getting around that if everyone will not agree. And a lot of times, what I see, and actually we have a lot of these cases as well, you maybe have like a family land and one of the people wants to sell it, the other people don't want to sell it, or, something along those lines. There is a mechanism though in the Texas code that allows for a partition by heirs. So basically if you own property as an heir and you inherited it and you own it with co-heirs, you can't agree, you can ask the court to partition the property,
Ah,
basically forcing a sale that is monitored through the court. They will appoint someone to sell it, and they'll appoint a receiver, and that person will sell it, and then we'll distribute the proceeds. So Texas law does not require you to own property indefinitely with heirs if you don't want to. Having said
good.
that, I mean, it's a lawsuit and it can be expensive. It's
Yeah,
always going to be easier if you can agree to something like this. But the existence of that remedy in the law can sometimes give people leverage, because sometimes people think they can just indefinitely hold up this process by just
right.
refusing to agree. But if you let people know, hey, look, the outcome of this is certain if we go to court, this is what will happen. And it is. You might as well just agree now and we will all get more money.
Exactly. You'll lose a lot of money if you don't.
Yeah, exactly. And that often convinces people, but some people are not rational.
Some people are, they're not.
Right. And
Logic is not a word.
the hardest situation is where one of those people is actually living in a home and they don't really have an option of another place to live. It's
Yeah.
very hard to get somebody like that to agree to it.
And they may not be able to buy out the siblings.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's a sad situation, but it
It,
happens.
it does.
What else would you like to share with us today? How can you help either realtors or the public with Simple Law Texas?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my top tips for really any just average individual person, whether you are a real estate agent or not, is to have an estate plan. That's just
Ah,
kind of the basics of law that applies to every single person. It's People are often really blindsided with what happens after somebody passes away. The rules are not as obvious as some people think they are, and a lot of people misunderstand them. But having an estate plan that is well drafted will save so much time and money in the long run for most people. And the cost to do it is extremely low considering what the stakes are. So that's just my number one legal advice to pretty much everybody. For
I
real,
also, if I can
sorry, go ahead.
interrupt for a second, I also think it's important that you consider who you're leaving behind, because it's your children or your siblings or whoever it is that's going to
Mhm.
have to deal with all of this. So make it as easy as possible. I mean, if you have to spend $200 to make their life easier, do it. It's worth
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. And a lot of times people say, well, it's their problem. They have to deal with it when I'm gone. They can pay to do it. And okay, that's fine. But what normally convinces people to change their mind on that is that it's not necessarily the money, it's also the relationship. Like, do you
Yeah.
want to set your children up for a battle that could make them estranged from each other?
Yes.
Nobody wants to do that.
Right.
And that happens so often. It's so sad and really could have been alleviated by something simple. And I think most people really understand that, because even though the money is one thing, and you may say, rightfully so, well, if they want my inheritance, they can pay to figure out how to get it. Okay, fine. But if that means that, a brother and a sister never talk to each other again,
How sad.
that's usually something people want
Yeah.
to avoid.
If you own property, you should have a will. If you have children, you should have a life insurance policy. I mean, some things you just should do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even if you don't own real estate, you should have a will. I have a lot of people say, well, I don't have any money. I'm 19 years old or whatever. And that may be true. But, and what I tell people, and this is a little bit morbid, is that, you may die today because a Walmart 18-wheeler hits you. And the moment that you die, your family now has actually a very valuable wrongful death lawsuit against Walmart. And you haven't put into place who you want to be in charge of that, who you would want to have that money, which could be a significant amount of money. So
Right.
people that think they have no assets, their situation could change instantly, and it could even change based on the circumstances of their death. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, we have a few minutes left, but before we get to the end, I want to make sure everyone knows how to contact you. So tell us how to contact you.
Yeah, absolutely. So best way is through my website. It's very easy. It's simplelawtx.com. I'm also on Instagram as simplelawtx. You can call us, but it's really easy to make an appointment online. Send us a contact and we'll reach out to you. So simplelawtx.com.
Well, I'm buying a property and I'm going to get a transfer of death because I think that would be the easiest thing for my
Absolutely.
children so that I'm taking care of them even when I'm not here. That's
Yeah,
my opinion.
I would agree. I would agree. Highly recommend it.
And you'll be the one doing it. Well, what
Yes.
else would you like to share with us before we leave?
Well, I just appreciate you having me. If you are listening to this and you have questions about it and you want more information or you want to learn more, definitely reach out to me through my website or through Instagram. Always happy to share everything I know. I have been in the real estate space for a long time and I love real estate agents and I love helping them learn things that help them convince their clients or show their clients, not convince their clients, but show their clients how much value they can add to their transactions.
Yes, we,
Reach out if
regardless
you
of what
have
some people think, we do more than just put a sign in the yard.
Oh gosh, I know that. Especially the good ones. I mean, there
The
may be
good
some
ones.
people doing that, but they're not good. And I'm in these, lawyer Facebook groups all the time, and
Uh,
people will say, "Oh, I'm selling my house, and I don't want to. I'm going to save money by not getting a realtor. I'm going to do it myself. How can I do it?" And I always say, if you think that you're going to save money by doing this yourself, then you have not worked with the right realtor in the past.
yes,
Let me
exactly.
give you some names of people that will never make you think that you're going to save money doing this yourself.
Right, because we can actually save you money also by knowing what questions to ask, by guiding
Absolutely.
you through the gauntlet of all everything, the contract, everything else. So yes, I agree with you completely. And writing a will needs to be done by a professional, which you can help everyone
Yes,
with.
absolutely. I'd be happy to help.
Well, Carey, I would love to have you back on here to talk more, but we try to limit these conversations to about 25, 30 minutes, and we're about
Yeah.
out of time. So thank you so much. I know you're busy, and I appreciate you coming on here.
Well, yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Carey. And you all remember to call or look her up on the website and then give her a call.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Real and Real Estate Podcast. I hope today's insights have inspired and empowered you. Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share the podcast with anyone who might benefit. Have questions or a topic you'd like us to explore? We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and keep moving towards success.